Good evening, everybody, and welcome into another episode of New England Sports Weekly. As always, I am your host, Sean Metcalf, and as always, I'm glad that you decided to join me again this evening. If you're listening live on the stream, or if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, or any other way that you do get your podcast as well, glad that you're tuning in and enjoying the show. We have again, it's I feel like I'm a broken record, but being here in New England and around the New England and Boston sports scene, there's always always a jam-packed agenda going on here, as well as there have been some big news items that have come across the board since we last met. But I hope that if you're just coming in from shoveling or you're whatever you're doing, because if you're here in Maine, you're going to get buried. We're in the 12 to 14-inch mark as far as the amount that we're expected. So about almost 2 feet of snow on top of the what 8 to 10 inches that we already got. So if you're hunkering down, I'm glad that you decided to join us, and we got a lot to talk about here tonight. So we'll dispense with some of the pleasantries here, and we'll jump into our out of the box segment as well. And to get things kicked off, the biggest of them all was Bill O'Brien is now officially back with the New England Patriots as the offensive coordinator. So he will be taking over play calling duties for the Patriots. And hopefully it just means that he is going to be just kicking not everybody, but mainly with Matt Patricia now officially out as the offensive assistant, whatever sham title that they gave him so that he could still get paid by the Lions, but no longer, but wasn't actually the offensive coordinator. All that mumbo jumbo. Hopefully he's gone or at least reassigned to somewhere else in the front office or somewhere where he's not actually on the field. And hopefully this means Joe Judge gets kicked back down to special teams where he actually was a pretty good coordinator before he left to be the Giants head coach as far as special teams, because Cam McCord just ain't it down there at special teams. But that's another discussion for another day. But now Bill O'Brien will be taking over those duties. And if you're Mac Jones, you have to be letting out a giant sigh of relief that you no longer have to work with Matt Patricia on a day-to-day basis. And I don't blame him one bit at all. We'll definitely jump into that here in just a moment. So, and in other Patriots news, one of the offensive coordinator candidates, Adrian Clem, who is the Oregon assistant head coach, offensive line, and he's got a million other titles out there, is now in strong consideration. And the Patriots, it seems as though they're narrowing their sights down to bringing Adrian Clem in to be their not offensive coordinator, obviously now with Bill O'Brien out, I should say, but to be their offensive line coach. And if you don't remember, Adrian Clem was Bill Belichick's first ever selection with the New England Patriots when he first came to the Patriots in 2000. And he played, I believe, at least on the first Super Bowl team in 2001. And he, after his playing career, he did go to the Pittsburgh Steelers to be their offensive line coach before heading out to Oregon and taking on some more duties. So he will be in strong consideration. That would be pretty nice to have a legitimate offense, somebody that's done a pretty good job, because when he was there in Pittsburgh during his time, he was a very solid offensive line coach. And obviously, you're not going to get Dante Scarnecchia, who's in his mid 70s, to come out of retirement now at this point. So you need to find that next young type of offensive line coach, because I know everybody wants to just tune things off when they hear offensive line talk. But if we're serious, the offensive line was was one of the reasons why Mac Jones was having some trouble. I know Mac has some of his own culpability that he has to own up to in this situation as well. But let's be honest, the offensive line did not do him any favors this year. And part of it was to do with some of the coaching, because you had Matt Patricia, who was technically the offensive line coach, the pseudo offensive coordinator and the Swiss Army knife, the jack of all trades, and definitely not a master of. He was definitely a master of none. We can definitely tell you that, especially the offensive coordinator position. But nonetheless, Adrian Clem in strong consideration, being narrowed down as the Patriots' top target for offensive line coach. So that would be a boost to this coaching staff as well, after having a brain drain, if you will, the last 2-3 years here with guys like Brian Flores leaving from the defensive side and taking a few Patriots guys, Josh McDaniels leaving last year to become the Raiders head coach for this season, and taking with him Nick Lombardi and a few other coaches from the staff. You're losing some big time coaches, but now you're finally starting to bring some competent ones back in bringing in Bill O'Brien. And if you can go get Adrian Clem and get him from Oregon, then I would feel a lot better about that. So some good pieces kind of falling into place here for the New England Patriots. And again, we'll get into a lot of that here in just a second. Now, the Boston Red Sox have added some depth in the infield and possibly a platoon, or maybe I wouldn't call it every day just because he's had some health problems. But the Red Sox have traded Josh Taylor to the Kansas City Royals for Alberto Mondesi. Every time I hear it, I hear them call him Alberto, but it's Adberto because there's a D in front of it. But whatever, I'm not going to get you guys bogged down in it. So Alberto Mondesi has been traded to the Boston Red Sox, who has led a couple of years ago, led the league in triples with 10. But I mean, nobody jumps up for joy and nobody's asks about the who led the league in triples last year. It's not like home runs, batting average, and RBIs and all those fun old school stats that people want to look at every day and be like, oh, who leads the league in home runs? No, nobody does that with triples. But he does have a solid glove, and he's not going to blow you away with the bat. But if you platoon him with Kike and Arroyo there at short and second, and depending on maybe, I don't know if they have a plan to bring in maybe a Elvis Andrus into camp, something like that. Maybe a Jose Iglesias. I don't know. Maybe at this point, after making the trade for Mondesi, probably not. But they do bring him in to fill a need there at short and in the infield after Xander Bogaerts walked out the door in free agency. The Red Sox were left scrambling to find something, and they've at least got somebody that's played the position. But again, he hasn't played it a lot, so he's kind of in the same boat as Kike Hernandez and Christian Arroyo. So it'll be a patchwork up the middle, especially now with Trevor Story, who they were depending on being their second baseman, or maybe possibly flipping him over to shortstop, his natural position. But after having that elbow surgery, it'll be a patchwork up the middle of the infield, not to say the least. But the Red Sox have made a move to at least bring in some depth there and some speed and a glove. So we'll see how that all works out for the Boston Red Sox. And in some news we'll talk about a little bit later, at the Red Sox Winter Festival or Carnival event that they have down in Massachusetts, down in Springfield, when the Red Sox front office got up on stage and the ownership, they were booed as soon as Henry started opening up his mouth and talking about baseball. Owning a baseball team can be expensive, and buying baseball players is expensive, and that got all kinds of awkward there as well for John Henry. And of course, the awkward exchange that Chaim Bloom had when talking about signing these big deals and making these deals with his whole dropping like 10 bets references, which obviously kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference to Mookie Betts. So, well, part of it wasn't tongue-in-cheek because they actually brought up Mookie, but the rest of it was. So that was very, very interesting to say the least as well. And in other news, the Boston Celtics have dropped 2 in a row. They dropped a very close game to the Miami Heat, who did not have Jimmy Butler last night, but the Celtics were dealing with a few injuries of their own. They didn't have Robert Williams or Marcus Smart, and no, excuse me. So that they were pretty thin on the bench. Or Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon. So you had to rely on Derek White and Pritchard to play a big chunk of minutes last night. But you still had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So in theory, you should have won against a team that didn't have Jimmy Butler in a controversial decision towards the last 50 seconds of that game where the Celtics had 2 timeouts left, but Joe Mazzulla did not use that. So we'll talk about his decision making as far as Joe Mazzulla in that situation, and if maybe the Celtics were right not to take the interim head coach tag off of Mazzulla at this point. Definitely touch on that. But the Celtics have hit a tiny little bit of rough patch. But I mean, come on, they're 35 and 12 at this point. So or 13. So we're talking about a team that is at the cream of the crop. They have the best record in the NBA. So at this point, you're kind of nitpicking with these things. But it was a little bit of a disappointing thing. And we'll see if maybe this is something to worry about heading down the stretch here with Mazzulla. Now, the Boston Bruins, on the other hand, are just absolutely on fire. They are absurd. We'll put it that way. They are honest to God. This is one of the more dominant teams I've seen in Boston sports history. Because I mean, obviously, you put up there the 2007 New England Patriots, who went undefeated through the regular season and made it all, and were 2 minutes away from winning that Super Bowl 42. They didn't get the job done. We remember the Red Sox of 2018, who are just an absolute wagon. The Celtics in 2007 were just dominant as well. Obviously, you go back to even before I was born, you look at the 86 Celtics, who were just absolutely loaded and arguably had one of the best teams in all of NBA history. You put them up there right with that 96 Bulls team, that 96-97 Bulls. But the Boston Bruins right now are 38-5-4. So 38 wins, 5 losses, and 4 over. So 5 regulation losses and 4 in overtime. So it has been a absolute tour de force if you're the Boston Bruins. That's just how well this has gone for them. So they took down their hated rivals, the Montreal Canadiens, 4-2 last night. And they in typical Bruins fashion over the last couple of weeks, where they've kind of been like, all right, well, a little ho-hum there for the first couple periods. And then that third period, they just turn everything on and they just absolutely take the soul of the team that they're playing, where, oh yeah, we thought we had a shot. It's kind of like being the big brother to the little brother in this situation, where you don't want to go outside and play ball. You don't want to go play pass or whatever. You're playing video games with them and you're kind of letting them win because you're not really into it. And then you're like, screw it. I just want to be done with this. I'm going to beat his ass. And that's exactly what the Bruins have been doing lately. It's like, yeah, you toy with them and then finally like, I'm going to be done with it and just it's going to take the victory and go home. And that's what they kind of did to the Montreal Canadiens last night. They were big brother to little brother and just stomped them in that fourth quarter, third period, and took away the victory. So the Boston Bruins have pretty much no warts at this point. That's how good they are. They're on pace to absolutely smash records. We'll get into that here in a little bit as well. But without further ado, we will dive into our main dish here, if you will. That is, the New England Patriots have brought back old friend Bill O'Brien back into the fold to be the offensive coordinator for the Patriots. So it'll be finally, hallelujah, the Patriots have finally come to their senses and brought in a legitimate offensive coordinator. And is he going to fix everything? Is he going to be the cure-all to everything? But no, you still got other things you have to do. You still have a lot of other things on your on your plate that you have to take care of, but you took care of the most important thing, and that was to get a legitimate offensive coordinator. And I know some people have been, well, he's still part of the Friends of Belichick, that FOB, but we're talking about a guy that we've all, at least a majority of Patriots fans, for the past 2 years have been clamoring for. Because after Josh McDaniels left last year, or I should say year, not 2 years, but for the last year, when Josh McDaniels took that job with the Vegas Raiders, everybody was clamoring for Bill O'Brien. And of course, you had that whole thing. Remember the HBO special where Belichick and Saban sat down and talked, and they both were like, well, we hate when we have coaches out of our coaching tree basically leave and poach our coaching staff when they take other coordinators with them to whatever job they're going to, which I mean, I can understand. You want to try to keep as much knowledge in-house so that you're not poaching. Basically, the family isn't poaching themselves. It's kind of like a mob situation. It's like a family situation, if you will. I have my territory. You have your territory. Maybe every now and then we'll if we need to swap a few family secrets here and there, we need you need a little cash, I need a little cash. That whole mentality, I guess, if you will. That's kind of how they operate. Like I have my territory, you have yours. We'll stay really good friends. Just don't come fishing down in this pool, basically. And for the most part, that's been the way between those two friends. And finally, when there were the Tide, when Alabama, they, for whatever reason, they wanted to get rid of O'Brien, and the Patriots pounced at that opportunity. I mean, you kind of saw this coming. This was easy because I mean, as soon as the season ended, that's pretty much what the reports were, and it didn't. What, it took a month? No, not even a month, because the season ended after the first week of January when they lost to the Bills and had a win and get in, and they didn't win. So the Patriots, as soon as that, pretty much as soon as the clock struck midnight on the next day, it was pretty much, the reports were flying in fast and furious that this is the direction the Patriots were looking to go into. Now, of course, they did the whole dog and pony show with bringing in other guys. Well, maybe not, because if Adrian Clem comes here to be your offensive line coach, you got something out of it. And then probably Belichick might use some of that with some of the Sean Jefferson and those others, as well as Keenan McCardell, maybe as an opportunity to see how those franchises, how those coaching staff kind of work and teams go. But nonetheless, I mean, you can't be mad. You can be, okay, this is good, or you can be excited, or kind of, all right, yeah, no, we're back to where we should be, those type of things. But so you should be happy, or somewhere in between the scale of, okay, this is good, I'm happy, to ecstatic, over the moon, somewhere in that scale, whatever it is. But you shouldn't be upset, because we've all been clamoring for a real offensive coordinator, and that's what Bill O'Brien is. We can sit here and debate where he ranks in the league, but I mean, this is a guy that's been a good offensive coordinator over his time in the NFL. And I know people want to point to what happened at the end of his tenure with the Texans, but just looking at this as his first stint with the Patriots, when he took over when Josh McDaniels left the first time, yes, did it help that he had Gronk and Hernandez and Wes Welker and a young Julian Edelman at the time? Yes, of course it did. Of course. But still, I wouldn't have trusted Matt Patricia to get his way out of a wet paper bag, let alone coach a Hall of Famer in Gronk, a guy that, if he had stayed out of trouble, would have been a Hall of Famer in Hernandez, and an All Pro Wes Welker, and a guy that bordered on the All Pro, was a Pro Bowler, and Edelman, and one of the franchise great slot receivers. Those two. Yeah, I wouldn't have trusted him. I wouldn't even give him the keys to that Ferrari in this case. He would have crashed it in 2 seconds. But Bill O'Brien came in and took over, implemented obviously, I mean, Belichick had to have a lot to do with this, obviously, because he's the one that brought the personnel in. But Bill O'Brien was the one that helped perfect that 2 tight end system here in New England. And that was a monster system that they created. Of course, they ended up getting to a Super Bowl in 2011 with it. And yes, where does Bill O'Brien have his moments where he gets heated? Yes. Is he that type of fiery type of personality? Yes, he is. And I think because some people want to be like, oh, well, Mac Jones was the one that said he wanted to get coached harder, but he's the one that's out there acting like a petulant child and had the arguments with Matt Patricia. But yeah, you have to look at it from the standpoint of, why was Mac Jones having those arguments? Why was he acting out in that case? Well, maybe because Matt Patricia doesn't know his ass from his elbow when it comes to coaching offense. So you want a second-year quarterback who was tagged as one of the smartest quarterbacks coming out of the draft back in 2021, excuse me. And somebody that's shown that he's smart. Yes, was the second year was nothing to write home about. I will grant you that. Mac Jones is still the one behind center, pulling the trigger and making these decisions on offense. That, yes, he's doing all that, so he has capability. But when your offensive coordinator has that Denny's midnight special menu and has 15,000 plays on it and still is bumbling around and can't make up his mind and then calls a million different screens, wouldn't you be pissed off? So the point here that I'm making with Mac Jones is, people want to say, well, what's going to be the difference? Bill O'Brien is just a tea kettle himself and is going to boil over. Yes, but Bill O'Brien has been a successful offensive coordinator in the league. And what people fail to realize is, yes, he had his arguments with Brady, and he had the famous one there against, I think it was the Redskins, I believe, or sorry, YouTube, the Commanders. Sorry, I used their former name at the time. But yeah, with Washington at the time when he had that famous blow up with Brady, but remember, they still got along. They still worked well together. Even if you watch the Tom Brady series on ESPN, it was obvious that they blew up at the time, but they made up. It was fine. They were able to settle it because they knew that they worked well together. So, and the thing is, yes, Bill O'Brien has a fiery passion. Yes, will he bark back at you? Yes, but he's unlike with Matt Patricia, where they probably got into a match where Matt Patricia would just be like, he'd probably just go back to the sideline and not say much because he doesn't know. In this case, Bill O'Brien, this is like a family argument where they can argue and fight each other, but at the end of the day, they're going to be able to sit down, have a couple beers with each other. So it's like your friends. It's like you might have at it, but at the end of the day, you're going to sit down and have a couple beers together because whatever. It was just that. It's water under the bridge at this point. And that's the point I'm making with Bill O'Brien, is that they can argue, they can have their blow up, but at the end of the day, Bill O'Brien can sit there and he could actually break down the play, break down what happened, and let Mac know why. And he could be like, okay, Mac, yes, whatever, we just had our argument, but guess what? This is why, because the X, Y, and Z happened. And to get to the rest, to get to the second level, third level of this play, to get the best out of that rep, this is what should have happened. So Bill O'Brien is going to be able to give Mac the information and tell him the why, where Matt Patricia was sitting there with his thumb up his ass and just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm just kind of the cannon fodder here until next year when they can get a legitimate offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien, which actually would happen. But that's the point I think people are missing, is that, yeah, is Bill O'Brien going to be tough to get along with? Is he going to be a fiery personality? Yes. But this is also a guy that's worked with a young Deshaun Watson and got a lot out of Deshaun Watson. And obviously right now, when you say that name, people think about other things, but this is before we knew about all his discretions, everything that happened with him lately. But he worked with a young Deshaun Watson, got a lot out of Deshaun. It was just that the rest of the personnel moves that he made along with the team were not great. Not great, Bob. But he was able to work well with Deshaun Watson. He went into his first job after leaving the Patriots was actually the head coach at Penn State, and he took over after the whole mess with Joe Paterno and everything that happened there at Penn State. He was the one came in and made Penn State back into a power, back into a respectable program again. He turned everything back around after all the scandal, all the mess there. And remember Christian Hackenberg, who is with the Jets and a few other places? Yeah, he might have been a hack in the NFL, but in college, Bill O'Brien made him look pretty damn good. At least made him look like a all-American quarterback at times. So he was able to kind of at least pump him up. So am I gonna say Bill O'Brien's gonna be the miracle worker? No, I'm not gonna say he's gonna come in here and then all of a sudden Mac Jones is gonna turn into Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or somebody like that right now and turn this team and be the next Tom Brady. I'm not saying he's gonna be a miracle worker, but you have the first step down. You have a guy that's competent, who's a good offensive coordinator that's competent, and I think he's going to work well with Mac Jones. They're going to be able to be where Mac Jones should have been this year in year number 2 and take a couple steps forward. Are we going to see an all-time great NFL offense out there? No, we're not going to see that. But we're going to get back to respectability. We're probably going to be above respectability because if you look at the stats from 2021, they were 9th in red zone offense, where this year they were 32nd. So they can get back in to the low end of the top 10 or high end of that 15 to 11 range. You get into there where, okay, you can actually get in the red zone. You're going to score. You're going to be able to be productive down there. And just look at where that offense was with Josh McDaniels and where it was going before they ran into a few hiccups there at the end of the season. If you can get back to build on what you had from Mac's rookie season and build on, and the other part here is guys like Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, if Jacoby Myers comes back, he's gonna know how to use those guys a lot better than Matt Patricia did. You're not gonna have a doghouse issue with Kendrick Bourne that you would think. This is a guy that in 2021 had a breakout year, had over 800 yards. Looked like he was going to be one of the go-to guys in this Patriots offense. And for some reason, he got into the doghouse with Patricia and I don't know, Belichick maybe, but mainly Patricia. And just plays weren't drawn up for him until the last couple of weeks when it was little way too late at that point. And this is a guy that I think can be a nice piece for you. Now, I honestly still think that they need a game breaker in there that can help complement the wow, excuse me. Help complement the Kendrick Bournes, or not, I mean, be the playmaker so that Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, and Jacoby Myers can be those second tier type of guys that can be the nice complementary pieces to put around that playmaker that you have. But again, there's still a lot that you can tap into with those guys. And the one thing though that I do have to kind of pump the brakes, because we talked about maybe a few of the negative parts, but some of those over the top parts with Bill O'Brien. I mean, let's take it easy on the Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Yes, Bill O'Brien was really good with that 2 tight end system when he was here the first time around as the OC, but you had Rob Gronkowski, who is arguably the greatest at his position, the greatest tight end of all time, arguably, was a freak. And then you had Aaron Hernandez, who was basically a wide receiver playing tight end and was such a mismatch that you had two unbelievable pieces there at tight end. Hunter Henry is a very good tight end, but he's nowhere near what Gronk is. Jonnu Smith is nowhere near the type of Swiss Army knife type of weapon that Aaron Hernandez was. So what you can't expect the Boston tight end TE party part 2. Now, what I think he can do, especially with Hunter Henry, is get him back to where he was his first year, where he was the red zone threat, where this is a guy that's 600 to 700, maybe pushing 800 yards of receiving, that where he, because Hunter Henry's never had above, I believe, like 720 some odd yards receiving. So we're not talking about Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, George Kittle type of absolute stupid numbers there at tight end, where they basically have wide receiver 1 numbers. But if he can get Hunter Henry back to being somebody that's in that conversation for after those top 5 tight ends that are in the league, if you can get him into the top 10 at the low end or top 12, where he's a reliable target, a safety blanket, and a red zone threat, get him back to that would be great. But let's not turn Hunter Henry into Rob Gronkowski 2.0. He's not that. And I don't even know if Bill O'Brien can save Jonnu Smith. Josh McDaniels couldn't do anything, couldn't get him to get going. So yes, I think he'll help improve the tight ends. And maybe if they go and draft a Mayer out of Notre Dame, maybe Mayer turns into a stud tight end that replaces Jonnu Smith. But I think he'll definitely improve what we have going on here with the tight end position. I definitely believe that's going to be something that he'll do, is definitely improve that. So I do like having Bill O'Brien into the fold, and like we talked about here, I think this is going to be wonders for Mac Jones. It really is. I think Mac Jones and him are going to work well together. Yes, are they going to have maybe a few blowups here during camp? But I think that Mac Jones now realizes that we have a legitimate offensive coordinator, somebody that in passing he worked with at Alabama towards the end of that national championship run. He didn't coach in the game, but he was there long enough to kind of get to know him just a little bit before the draft process. So this is a guy that at least Mac Jones has had a passing kind of knowledge of. And so I think this will work pretty well for the Patriots. So again, there's still a lot to go through, and we'll get into that through the offseason. You got to improve that offensive line. You got to get some number one weapon or number one weapons as well. You got to improve that. So there's other things that you got to keep doing, but you got the most important thing out of the way, done with early in the offseason. And I do have to applaud the Patriots from that standpoint, that you didn't dick around and you actually got it done as soon as possible in this case. So that'll definitely be interesting. And one kind of other note here to just kind of pass along is that we forgot to mention the out of the box segment, is that the Patriots coaching staff will be the ones coaching at the Senior Bowl down in Alabama in Mobile. So that'll be interesting. It's them and I believe the either Falcons or Cardinal staff. I can't remember which one exactly, but nonetheless, that'll be interesting to see now that Bill O'Brien's back in the fold and how that's going to go, because Troy Brown has been named the head coach for that game. It won't be Belichick, but Troy Brown will be. So we'll see how that goes. It's kind of like a little bit of a test run there for this. I don't think Bill O'Brien's going to be. I don't know how heavy-handed he's going to be in this. Probably he'll take a little bit of a backseat, but I'm sure he'll be going down there, kind of overseeing things and just kind of checking it out, and maybe doing a little scouting down there as well. So we'll see how this all kind of unravels or how this kind of goes for the Patriots down there. So that's one of the notes as well. Now, one thing I want to touch on here for a little bit is it's funny but awkward at the same time. The Red Sox had their winter carnival, winter festival down in Springfield that they usually have every year, except for the last couple of years because of COVID. The first year that it was back in a while. And man, I mean, usually you have all the dog and pony show. You got the owners, the front office, the players, everybody comes up. So Friday night of last week, on the first night of this of the winter festival down there, or whatever the winter thing is called, they brought up the front office and the ownership group, and of course, we've well documented this on this show. And if you've been living under a rock, remember the Red Sox have had a rough go of it the last couple of years with having to trade away Mookie Betts before the 2020 season. You didn't sign Kyle Schwarber back to a deal and now last year he led the National League with 46 home runs, major bat that you could have had. You obviously this offseason you lost Xander Bogaerts. The Trevor Story contract has been a mess here, and the direction of this team just seems to be nowhere. Nobody knows. The compass is broken. It just keeps on spinning. We don't know what damn direction it's going in. So this is very, very interesting as far as what is going on with the Red Sox. So again, they've had an interesting offseason to say the least, and in my opinion, they've deserved the kind of heckling that they've gotten as far, maybe not to like, I'm not saying malicious, but as far as just what they've done is just, and I've gone over it here in this podcast. You all know that I'm fed up with what's going on down on Jersey Street, with formerly Yawkey Way, in the front offices, and it's just it's maddening. And now at the winter weekend down there in Springfield, when they came onto the stage, they were taking questions from fans, and one of the fans asked John Henry about not signing these players and the high ticket prices and affording to not being able to afford to go to games, and if you're not bringing these, and how you're going to improve that. And basically, when he started talking about, when he got to the sentence, well, it's expensive to buy baseball players and own a team, then that's where he immediately got booed. And then he tried to be like, well, listen and hear me out. And that was just, it was cringy, but at the same time, you're like, don't disagree with you booing, because it's like, we know, John, we know it's expensive to own baseball players. We get it. But, we would be willing to suck it up and deal with these expensive prices for a $12 friggin' Sam Adams beer, or $10, whatever it is, for the cost of what I can go and get a 6 or 12 pack of something at the store for. I have to pay for just one beer. But you know what? I'm at Fenway Park. I'll suck it up. I'll buy the $12 beer and my $8 hot dog, and then spend another $50 on just a couple more food items while I'm down there, and then go buy whatever else I want while I'm down at Fenway, and how many other beers I drink. Yeah, I'll spend $200 worth of food and sink $500. I know I'm going a little overboard, but you get the drift. It's expensive to go to Fenway Park and watch the Red Sox. But you know what? We can suck it up and deal with it if you're putting a good product out on the field. So that's where I'm saying we're not stupid, because we'll deal with the high prices if you put a product out on that field. So it's give and take, John. It's give and take, Henry. Yes, it's expensive to pay these players, so that's why you have to spend all this money on, or that's why you have to jack those prices up. And yes, I know Fenway Park has the smallest seating capacity in all of baseball, because it's only 37,000 some odd seats, 38 some odd thousand. It's the smallest park because of it's how old it is. So I get that you have to charge a little bit more for the prices. I get it. You have to make up in some of those areas. I get it. But at the same time, you're going to lose money by not signing those players because fans aren't going to want to show up in the middle of June, July, August, May, whenever it is. They're not going to show up in the middle of the summertime when for the last 20 years, because you bought them in 2002, and then your first season owning them was 2003. So this will be year number 20 under this ownership group, which, don't get me wrong, they have done a lot for this organization. They brought 4 World Series championships, but does anybody want to go this summer? And listen, I'm sure I will probably I'll probably sucker my own self into going down to Fenway. I know it sounds weird because you're like, oh, don't you love the Red Sox? And I've grown up a diehard Red Sox fan. Yes, I have. But at the same time, man, it's going to watch that product is going to be tough. Now, that's the whole point. It's like, do you want? Yes, you're going to get the tourists who come to Fenway Park. They come from Iowa. That come from, I don't know, New Mexico, or I'm just throwing random states out there, Idaho, or way out there, California, Florida, wherever they're coming from. You're going to get all the tourists that come all from across the country and just want to partake in Fenway Park. They could give a rat's ass if the Red Sox are winning or losing, but they're just there because it's the touristy thing to do. Or you're a baseball fan, or you are one of those baseball fans that's trying to travel across the country and knock off a few knock off some of those baseball parks, going to all of them. I get it. I respect that. You do what you want to do, but the actual core of your fan base, the majority of your fan base, not the pink hats, not the tourists, not those people, or not the people just trying to take up a summer day and do something outside, but the people, the hardcore fans, your majority of your fans are just going to say, screw this. You're not putting out, you didn't sign Xander Bogaerts. You didn't bring back Kyle Schwarber. You didn't go out and get top tier guys in the pitching rotation. You didn't make these trades. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. You're putting out this crap product out onto the field. Why am I going to spend my money on this? So are you surprised you got booed? And then, of course, Sam Kennedy jumped in there. And I know Sam Kennedy grew up here, and I know he grew up a fan, and I know he's just trying to do his job. But when he brings up we have the $9 tickets, which those are only for college kids. What am I going to go grab my 10-year-old because I graduated college in the summer in June of 2013 or May of 2013? What am I going to go do? Go grab my old Nescom? Well, actually, they got bought out by Husson now. So what am I going to go grab my old Nescom one that's basically defunct at this point and be like, oh, well, I'm 10 years out of college. Can I get a $9 ticket? No, that's only for current college kids. What do you want? People like myself have to go pay, unless I'm going to go sit way, way up underneath the scoreboard and pay the 20. I don't even know if they're still 25. I think you get jacked up to even more than that. But am I going to pay? I'd rather go a couple times during the year, spend the 50 to 60 or 70 something dollars a ticket for the better seats that I would enjoy. But there's no other. I have to pay the full price. And if I'm paying full price for these tickets, I want a good product. Or else, you know what I can do? I can sit home and watch the crap product, and instead of paying that for each game, I get to just pay the cable bill, and that's that. And you don't have to worry about spending all this money on the food because I can go to the store, buy a 12-pack for $10.99 or whatever it is, depending on what beer I get. So I can save a lot of money by staying at home watching the same crap product. When in the years past, when they were competing for division titles and championships and were in the postseason, I loved going down. And trust me, I'm still going to love going down there. Like I said, I'll probably still end up going to a game or two this year, but I'll sit there being like, man, this sucks. So it's probably going to deter. Like if I go there once and it's like, well, this really, really sucks sitting here in person and watching them get beat 10-2 against the Orioles, then yeah, what do you expect? So I don't know. It's frustrating to see the disconnect that this ownership group has with the fan base. Now, I know you can't act like the fans or else you're going to be the old saying, you can't act like the fans or else you're going to be sitting in the stands with them eventually. But you also run a business. And right now, you're doing a lot of bad business moves. You don't have a business plan as far as what you're doing with this team. You like I know I've come back to this, but yes, you did sign Rafael Devers, but you have to feel the rest of a team around here. And the media that covers the team, nobody knows what in the hell your plan is other than we're going to stockpile a million draft picks and a million prospects and hope to God that they all that all our top prospects pan out, which that is a piss poor way of running a team because yes, you do have prospects that do become stars, that do become everyday players that you can bank on, but or I shouldn't say bank on, wrong term there, but that you can eventually pencil in that lineup or in the rotation. But to put the hopes and dreams of your franchise on these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that are down in high A or double A Portland and they're not close to double A yet, or I mean not double A, triple A, but to put all of the franchises hopes and dreams on that and not to retain the stars you already had or go out and sign these free agents or make these trades, then it's just man, it's what direction are we going in other than just stockpiling every draft pick and prospect out there? And what are we doing? What are we doing? So that was just the frustrating part there that I saw during the winter weekend. And I mean, like I said, it was awkward just because you're like, oh, okay. Because there are a few times where you're like, all right, I kind of get it. But then for the most part, it's like, then you're like, I don't feel too bad. I mean, look what you've done this offseason. So, and it's the only way that these fans really get to show their frustration to the ownership group because it's not like during the season they come down and walk through the aisles and like just like a manager at a restaurant like, are you enjoying your meal? How's everything going? Oh, I'm so sorry. I will comp you for that if something went bad. It's not what the Red Sox ownership group is doing. You'll see them disconnected all the way up in their owners, all the way up in their owner's box, whatever. I mean, that's what the owners do, but you don't see them many times during the year. This is the one time the fans have to voice their displeasure. So I don't blame them. But like I said, they did make a move to get Adberto Mondesi, the son of Raul Mondesi, onto their team, who plays plays shortstop, but didn't play a lot last year. He was dealing with some injuries. He's got speed. He can, like I said, he can play defensively pretty good there. So again, we're talking. I know some people want to bring up, well, they're okay, so they're plugging this hole, or that they found an option there, maybe an everyday. But let's be honest, the moves that the moves that they're making right now, they're putting a band-aid over a fracture at this point. And it's you've already screwed yourself by watching Xander Bogaerts walk out the door, and you didn't sign any of the other top options. You didn't make a trade for anybody. Well, okay, let me back that up because Mondesi was a trade, but you didn't make a trade for anybody that anybody would care about, or anybody that I believe can really contribute to the team on an everyday basis. We're getting a guy in Mondesi who's a solid player, going to be a platoon guy with Kike and with Christian Arroyo. But let me just put it this way. When you have 4 infielders or whatever it is at this point, and you're going to have to juggle them back and forth until you get, and if Trevor Story can even come back, you don't really have any starting Well, Kike Hernandez is a starter, but I mean, as far as he shouldn't be, he should be your everyday center fielder. He shouldn't be your everyday shortstop. But right now, it's a triage unit there for the Red Sox as far as that infield is concerned. They're just trying to plug up every hole and make sure the Red Sox don't end up dying here as far as in this case is because they're just hemorrhaging as far as confidence and the season is going because it just right when you thought everything was going well with Rafael Devers, you lose Trevor Story and you're right back to square one. So you right now, we were talked about it last week that you have one legitimate bat. You have one superstar in Rafael Devers, and he's expected to carry the load. Now, obviously, you take a positive look at this. Well, Tristan Cassis developing anything. We'll see how that goes for you. But that was just kind of the interesting. That was the one little nugget of Red Sox news there that we had for you. Of course, we'll let you know if anything kind of else unfolds there with the Boston Red Sox. Now, one of the stories that came out of last night's loss as we switch over to the Boston Celtics is the strategy or maybe lack thereof from Joe Mazzulla in the last 50 seconds or so of that game where it was a one possession game. Well, at the time it was tied and then the Celtics threw that horrific pass, which got intercepted. They're up by, then Miami goes up by 2. And that's where Joe Mazzulla probably should have called that timeout there. Tatum was dribbling down the floor. But you had 2 timeouts in that situation. And I know Joe Mazzulla is that type of coach that just wants to take his talent and let the players' talent win out in this situation. Now, of course, I mean, we're nitpicking at this point because, like I said, the Celtics are the best team in the NBA record-wise. Well, I mean, they're the best team in the NBA, period, no matter if you just say best team or record-wise. Either way, they're 35-14 at this point. So they're 11 games above 500. They're a juggernaut. They're one of the best. They're the best team in the league. So at this point, we're nitpicking a lot of things. But this is something that could come to bite you down the road because the way I look at it here is, am I panicking? No. Am I worried that they're going to miss the playoffs or they're going to fall out? No, of course. You're like I said, they're still the best team in the NBA. They have the best duo in the NBA with Tatum and Brown. But for me, what kind of worries me here is that you have Joe Mazzulla, who this was kind of the worry here with him. He's handled himself pretty well throughout the season, but this is one of those situations where maybe an Udoka or another veteran coach would have come in and taken a time out there for a team that's a little bit depleted, been dealing with injuries at this point, where you've had to have guys like a Peyton Pritchard, who's played 40 minutes in the last couple nights, where he wasn't getting anywhere close to that. So he's played a lot with both Brogdon and Marcus Smart have been out the last couple games. So this is an opportunity to kind of give them a little bit of rest, draw up that play. But things just kind of in those last 50 some odd seconds kind of fell apart there for the Boston Celtics. Now, and then this was one of those defensive struggles. So from that standpoint, he has gotten better with the defense on their end. This is something that they've had a better grasp of. But still, it's been the last couple nights have been frustrating there with just the coaching situation. And is this something that once you get into the playoffs, where you have a coach that I know he's been on the Celtic staff for the last 3 years, but you're having some problems that popped up, especially in the NBA Finals, where turnovers, some bad decisions have been made late in those games, where the Celtics, when they're below 16 turnovers in the month of January, they're 8-1, and then when they are over 16 turnovers. They're 1-4 in January. So this is something that came to bite them in the ass in the playoffs and finally caught up to them in the NBA Finals against the Warriors, where they got where they lost in 6 games. But the Celtics can't afford to do that when you get into the playoffs, because as good as they are, as talented as they are, once you get into the playoffs, especially once you get out of that first round or two, then it starts getting harder there. And is Joe Mazzulla going to be the right man for the job? Is he going to be the guy that's going to be able to make those decisions late in games when you need to call a timeout, when you see that your guys are tired, when you see that they have a lot of these turnovers? Are you going to be able to make that call, take that timeout, take a player to the side and just say, okay, no, all right, just calm down, settle down here. Just make that easy outlet pass. Just don't worry about trying to play hero ball here. Is he going to be able to get into their face? And just kind of last night was one of those situations where it was weird that you had those 2 timeouts, take one, just take one. And then of course, the odd part after the game was supposedly when he went to the locker room, he did a somersault in front of Marcus Smart I think it was Smart, and was like, yeah, can you do that? And it was kind of an odd kind of exchange that they had there. But so Joe Mazzulla is a little bit different than what you had in Ime Udoka last year. But again, I'm not panicking. This is not something that right now that I'm worried that the Celtics are screwed or anything like that. But this is just something to kind of keep an eye on as we go towards get down the stretch, get towards the playoffs here, because we have like 38 games left. So again, this is something where I just want to see him clean that up and get better at some of those in-game decisions, because for the most part, he's been pretty good. But this is just kind of one of those situations where you're starting to kind of see a few chinks in the armor of Joe Mazzulla when it comes to his inexperience as far as being a head coach. So I think it's just something to keep an eye on here for you. It's not a 5-alarm fire by any means, but this is just one of those little brush fires that you got to kind of keep contained and just make sure that it doesn't get out of hand here for you. And of course, their counterparts across the garden in the locker room, the Boston Bruins, have just been absolutely on fire. And I know we haven't talked a lot about them here in the last couple of weeks, but I mean, outside of some few updates here on David Pastrnak and with his mega deal and how that's going, there really hasn't been any type of negative, really, because let's be honest. I mean, if a team keeps on winning and winning and winning, I mean, everything's all hunky dory and everything's good. There's no little juicy stories to talk about in this situation. But the Boston Bruins are on a historic pace. They are already, as we talked about, they have 38 victories. They're on pace to break the 95 to 96 Red Wings team and have 66 victories on the season. So they're already on pace to smash that record by 4 victories. Then they're on pace to smash the all-time season points record, which is held by the Montreal Canadiens of the 77 through 78 team, and which has 132 points. Right now, the Boston Bruins are on pace to earn 139 points with all their victories. So this is a hockey team that is on pace to be epically great, one of historically great, possibly the greatest hockey team of all time. Obviously, you can't call them the greatest if they don't win a Stanley Cup. So that's the big one right there. But right now, they're on pace to absolutely obliterate the wins record and points record for a season. So that's why it's kind of ho-hum sitting here. But I mean, honestly, with this Boston Bruins team, they have not one but two goaltenders that could be starters on anybody's team. And right now, Linus Ullmark is on pace to be the Vezina Trophy winner. He's that good. And this is the guy that when they signed him from the Buffalo Sabres, we all kind of collectively were like, all right, that's kind of an odd move. Because at the time, remember last year, you had Tuukka Rask, who was coming back from his injury. You had Jeremy Swayman, the University of Maine product, who was in the pipeline to be the future everyday goaltender. And of course, Swayman struggled a little bit last year, and then this year, Ullmark has come in and totally redefined his trajectory and his story. He's become the best goaltender in the National Hockey League, bar none. And then Jeremy Swayman, who had a couple bumpy games in the beginning of the season, but he has become a stud in the net as well. So you have two great goaltenders. Now, obviously, goaltender is just like quarterback in the NFL. You can't play two at once. Not like you can play multiple forwards at once. So it's a good problem to have, though. You have two absolutely stud and on fire goaltenders that can just steal a game for you. So that they're playing very well. David Pastrnak is on pace to have 65 goals, just 65 goals alone, which that's not going to break the Bruins record because it was Phil Esposito who had 76 goals back in the 1971 cup winning season. So or a 70 cup winning season. But I mean, he's on pace to have one of the best seasons in Bruins history. I think he'll be second all time behind Phil Esposito in that case. But nonetheless, he's on pace to have a historic season, have 65 goals himself, and on pace to have over 100 points. And just think about this, because I heard a stat earlier where in the 2011 Cup winning team, so this is a team that won a Cup, you had Milan Lucic and David Krejci, who were the top scorers on that team. Both themselves only had 60 plus points. So we're talking about Pastrnak, who is on pace to have 65 goals himself, plus whatever 40 to 50 assists himself. So now, if it wasn't for not Leon Draisaitl, but Connor McDavid, Jesus on ice, if he wasn't having a just unfathomable, unconscious season up there in Edmonton, then David Pastrnak would probably be the favorite to win the Hart Trophy, which is the NHL's version of the MVP. He would be in the MVP conversation. Well, I mean, he's in the MVP conversation, but I mean, he should be the one in the lead. So that's just what we have with the Bruins. So I mean, it's not like one of those situations where it's like, oh, okay, we have a few good things going here, but then we have a few bumps along the road. It's no, this team is on a historic pace, and I mean, I haven't given them enough attention on this show, but like I said, it's just more because it's been ho hum as far as all right. We got another victory tonight. Oh, just wrapped up another one. It's just every night you turn on the game and it's like, okay, yeah, you might be down a goal in the first period, or they're just kind of, like I said, it's kind of like watching like a cat play with a mouse that it's about to kill, where it's just kind of pawing it back and forth, playing with it, and then that mouse is dead. It's screwed. It's kind of the same thing here with the Bruins. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like the big brother thing. Eventually, yeah, whatever. I'll let you win for right now, but I'm the big brother. I'm gonna eventually just pick you up, toss you to the side, take the ball and go home because I'm that much better than you. And that's what the Bruins are doing. They're the big brother in this situation. Yeah, for the first couple periods, at the first period, you might get your feet wet there a little bit and like, oh, all right, yeah, I think I can play with them. And then the Bruins just turn on the Jets and they end up scoring a couple goals, take a 3-1 lead, or like last night they won 4-2. So they're just absolutely on fire right now, and they can do no wrong. This is just a team that right now we know they're heading to the playoffs at this point. There's no doubt about it. Now it's just a matter of are they going to win the cup? That's the question, because they're that good. That's really the only question they have left. Are they going to have enough to get over the top and win that cup? Because remember, they've been to 3 cups. They won in 2011. They went to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final in 2013 and lost in the final to the Blackhawks. And then in 2019, in a Stanley Cup Final, they should have won the cup in. They should have beaten that Blues team. They lost in 7 games to the eventual Cup champion. Well, eventual, because it was the Stanley Cup Final, but they lost to the Blues in Game 7. So this is a situation where this core, which has been trying to get there, where to begin the season, let's all be honest. I don't care how big of a Bruins homer and optimist you are. You didn't see this, because the only thing they really did was just change the head coaches, brought in Jim Montgomery, but we've seen that's made a huge difference. Now, I know you're getting a full season of Hampus Lindholm, who you assigned to that 8-year deal after trading for him from Anaheim, and he's paid major dividends. But it's not like you brought in a big-time free agent in the offseason. You did bring back David Krejci, who took a year off and went back home to the Czech Republic. He's back. So it's not like they overhauled the team. Of course, you have good you have a mix of veteran talent that's been here for a while. Then you have the David Pastrnaks, the Charlie McAvoys, the Hampus Lindholms, the Swaymans, those guys that are the younger core on this team. But you didn't make major changes. So this is why it was all surprising. So that's why I'm saying, if you're the biggest optimist, you couldn't even see this coming. I told you this is a team that I didn't expect to be more than at highest the 6th seed. And I said they would probably be fighting for that that range between the last wild card spot to the top wild card spot. I didn't think that they would be anywhere close to being the best team in the NHL. I reserved that for teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Florida Panthers, the Carolina Hurricanes, who have, in the last couple of years, of course, the Lightning have all been at the cream of the crop, but the Bruins have just found magic. And of course, like I said, they have really good players. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I know right now I'm making it sound out like they had one star and a bunch of bums. No, they like I said, they have guys like Pastrnak, who is a top 5 goal scorer in the NHL. He's a stud. You have 2 stud goaltenders. You have that stud defensive pair of Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm. And of course, then you have really good role players there in Krejci, and you have Taylor Hall, who was a former MVP and is still in his he's in his early 30s. He's like 31 now. So we're talking about a guy who's still got plenty of years left. We got a nice, good mix of talent on this team. So it's obviously, we knew this team had the talent, but it was just, all you did was change the coach. So what can this really do? But it's been really exciting to watch this Bruins team. And again, it's at this pace, it's more or less, can they win the cup, or will they win the cup at this point? That's kind of what we're left with how good they've been. Now, as we like to do to wrap up the show, our last segment here is going to be our one big bet of the week. And now we're down to getting down to the last couple weeks here, the NFL season, as it is going to be it's conference championship week this coming Sunday, with the NFC Championship, which is going to be at 3:00, with the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the San Francisco 49ers with a trip to represent the NFC in Super Bowl 56 out in Arizona. Now, or 57, sorry. But in this case, the 49ers are the underdog in this case. They are a plus 125. So they're not a heavy underdog in this case. But Philadelphia, who was the best record-wise team in the NFL all season, is the slight favorite. They are only a 2.5-point favorite. is what our friends at DraftKings are showing. Now, this one, this is going to be tough because I've won a few bets with the Eagles over the season, but man, do I love betting on this Niners team. And this Niners team has been my go-to gold standard as far as am I looking to kind of win a bet? Do I need to get back on track with some of these wins? And then I go to the 49ers and they usually do me pretty good here. And I know the Eagles have a dominant game on the front line with their offensive line led by Jason Kelsey and of course Johnson at guard. Sorry, I zoned out there for a second, but but you know who I'm talking about. But in that case, their offensive line and defensive line has been owning the line of scrimmage. The Philadelphia Eagles have 4 players on the defensive side of the ball with 10 plus sacks. So they have over 70 sacks as a team. So they own the trenches both on the offensive and defensive side. They're just road graders, especially offensively. They're able to, with Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders, just to run over you. And that's obviously with Miles Sanders, we saw last year, he had a pedestrian season, had only 700 some odd yards rushing. But this is a really good Philadelphia team, and bringing in A.J. Brown from Tennessee, making that trade was one of the best moves in all of football last offseason, as this has drastically improved this team and given them a true number one. Well, really, they have 2 number ones because Devontae Smith has had a really good year at 1,100 yards. But there's just something about this 49ers team, which they themselves defensively are loaded defensively, especially on the front 7 with Greenlaw, Bosa, just all across the board. Fred Warner, they're so stacked. And then offensively, obviously, I'm going to give Philadelphia the edge when it comes to quarterback, but all those weapons that San Francisco has, from Kittle to Deebo Samuel to Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, this is just another animal that I don't know if Philadelphia has seen in this case. Now, to me, this is going to be such a fun game. This is going to be such a fun game to watch. And Brock Purdy, the Mr. Irrelevant pick, the very last pick of this year's draft, didn't think you'd even hear his name in a playoff game, let alone an NFC championship game. He's going to be under center. And I just think there's something there with this 49ers team, that this is a special group that's been put together. I mean, obviously quarterback has been the one position that they've had trouble staying healthy, but I just think there's going to be too many pieces out there on the field for the Eagles to deal with. And I think that Purdy magic is going to continue in this NFC championship game. So I am going to take the 49ers, who are plus 125. I'm going to take them on the money line and parlay that with the over of 46.5. And for good measure, give me a Deebo Samuel touchdown. Gives you a plus 600 on the day. So slap down a cool $20 bill there, and that gets you a winning of $140, my friends. So that's a nice little weekend there if you can walk away with $140 betting on the San Francisco 49ers to take down the Philadelphia Eagles. That's going to be a good one. And over on the AFC side, because I know we usually do one, but both of these games there's only 2 of these left. The 2 games this weekend. So, and both games are really good. I love both of these games. In this one, I do like the favorite. I know Cincinnati's on the road, but Joe Burrow and those Bengals teams are just, there's something else as far as Joe Burrow is a mix of all the great clutch quarterbacks with Tom Brady. I'm not saying he's Tom Brady, but Tom Brady, Joe Montana. You throw Roger Staubach, you throw all the greats in there that are cool under pressure when things get tough. He's the guy that you can turn to when you know he's going to be able to pull it out and get you a win. And so Cincinnati goes into Kansas City, and right now Patrick Mahomes is dealing with that ankle injury. So I'm not I wouldn't feel comfortable putting my money on Kansas City because obviously Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the league. Let's not forget that. I know we've had the conversation with Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, and you throw some other names in there, but let's be honest. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes, he's still the best in the game right now at this point. So it's hard to pick against him, but I just think that Joe Burrow, this is the year for the Bengals. I know they went to the Super Bowl last year, but they've made even better improvements this year. Joe Burrow's just so cool under pressure that I don't think it's going to phase him to go on the road in Kansas City. So I am going to take the Bengals and take the over of 47.5, because I think, unlike last week where I thought it would be a lot of fireworks where I lost taking the over, but I think this game with Patrick Mahomes and in the AFC Championship, that this is going to be a good one. So I'm going to take the Bengals with the Bengals on the money line and the 47.5 over, and also give me I tried it last week, it didn't work, but I still have a feeling that T Higgins, he's a good bet to score. He's a plus 195, so you get some good odds there. And again, that gives you plus 600. So again, putting a 20 down on that one gets you $140. So that's again another nice weekend where if you want to spice it up and put 40 down, then that's 280. So, but again, those are some good odds there. And if you want to parlay that together and get that 1,200 odds, then you might and parlay both games, and that's even better for you. But again, I like both of these games. Again, I love the 49ers on the road. So taking the 49ers with the over and with the Deebo Samuel. And again, the Bengals are taking on the AFC side with that over 47.5, along with a T Higgins touchdown. And again, that's a nice, cool $140 each on both of those bets. So that would be a nice little weekend. So again, hopefully if you do take my advice, and hopefully if you send me a little bit of a chunk of change there, if you win, I'm just messing with you guys, but I hope best of luck to any of you that do bet this weekend. And of course, we will, as I mentioned, after the Super Bowl is over, we'll continue to even do some bets here along with the NHL and NBA, and into the regular season of baseball. We'll do some of that as well for you, because it's fun to look at those, and it's fun to bet. All right, folks. Well, that will do it for this episode of New England Sports Weekly. And as always, you can hit the like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. And remember, every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, we are on air. And usually it's about an hour to an hour and a half each episode. And then, of course, if you can't make it to the live stream, you can always follow. You can always subscribe to the show on Spotify or SoundCloud, and just search New England Sports Weekly and you'll find the show, and hit this like and subscribe on both of those as well. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always hit up the live chat here on the show, or you can always send out a question to the show account on Twitter, which is NE Sports Weekly, and send us any questions, comments, or hey, if you hate the show, I'll take any feedback at this standpoint. Or you can go to the Instagram account, which is NE Sports WK. Send any comments, questions there, or follow me on my individual account at Sean_Met28. It's the same on Instagram and on Twitter as well. All right, everybody. Well, you have a good rest of your weekend. We will talk to you next Wednesday.